Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Ite Namani.
We took a group of devotees and we went to Vishakhapatnam. And Srila Prabhupada stayed at the Krishna Chaitanya Mission, which was the temple of Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Maharaj. So we stayed there 7 days. And Anand Prabhu was working in that mission. Puri Maharaj gave Anand Prabhu to Srila Prabhupada. You know, you've heard the stories of Anand Prabhu. He is Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's disciple. He's a brahmachari. He could do the work of 10 men. He would cook 10 preps for 200 people with 1 or 2 assistants. Later he came in Vrindavan. All the devotees from Vrindavan know him. He worked when the Krishna Balaram temple was being built. So we stayed there and he cooked the feast. 2 feasts a day. And Srila Prabhupada used to walk up and down as we were eating and say, eat more, eat more. And he would be so satisfied. Chaturvidasri Bhagavat Prasada, Svadana Triptan, satisfaction. He was so satisfied to see us taking this. And as a neophyte as I was, I was overeating and I had to eat. So I would eat, and come lunchtime, I had no hunger, 0, but I would eat again. And at nighttime, no, it was still in my stomach, and again, because it was so good. And after the 3rd day, then I threw up everything, finally, and went to sleep for about 8 hours in the afternoon, you know. But Srila Prabhupada used to take this, and that was a good incident. Many more. On Govardhan Hill, we went to Govardhan once, and on the Parikram, the only time he went there. So we were in the Govardhan, and we had brought a big basket of puris and some sabji for taking lunch. So we sat on the veranda, and many dogs came around, and the devotees were eating. So someone threw a rock at the dog, and Srila Prabhupada said, no, this is Govardhan, everyone eats. And Srila Prabhupada took the puris from his plate and threw them to the dogs. He said, feed the dogs now. All the dogs must eat and they will be satisfied. Always mini prasadam. Prasadam is, everyone got prasadam. No one went away without some prasadam. Anybody visit, give him some prasadam, give him some prasadam. Srila Prabhupada would come in his room. Sometime he would be, especially, this was when I would be out. I would come back, I'd been out serving, and I came back to Vrindavan or something. I'd come in his room, and then sometimes he would feed me with his hand. Here, he would take this rasgula and take this, and I would sit and eat, and he would share his meal with me. This happened a few times. He would share his meal with me, and like that, how was everything, and we would eat together. With his hand, he would give me.
When I joined in February '72, I found myself in India, in Bombay, later on in May, just a few months. And that year, of course, that was building the Bombay temple. But when Srila Prabhupada came to India in the month of Kartik that year, devotees would trade off. A few devotees would go to Vrindavan, and hear lectures, and then they'd trade off. Some other people went. So I went with Harikesha. And when I arrived, the first day, Srila Prabhupada was giving lecture in the morning on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the first thing that I realized, there's no difference between reading his books and watching him speak. It was the same exact thing. And I was thinking, well, I really better, listen carefully. This is the holiest place on the planet, in the courtyard of the Radha Damodar temple. And there was only probably 24 devotees there, something like that. And at some point I got to the fan, Srila Prabhupada, during the lecture and that sort of thing. And after class, in the evening especially, because they had Nectar of Devotion class in the afternoon. And after that, in the evening, Prabhupada would entertain guests, and they would all crowd into his room, and darshan every night, And one time they asked Srila Prabhupada, what does it mean the spiritual master is the external representative of Krishna? And he said it's just that the spiritual master speaks what Krishna would speak if you could hear it. So he's the external representative of Krishna, Sakshatra. He's the via medium to Krishna.
So I think it must have been 1975 when the opening of Krishna Balaram Temple was there. And every day Prabhupada used to go down, they unfortunately still call it Chatikara Road, but it's now legally the Bhaktivedanta Swami Marg. So we would all walk with Prabhupada. So one day Prabhupada was walking down and he was just so heavily preaching against abortion and birth control. He was just going on talking about how nasty this abortion is, this Kali Yuga. And he gave the example, he said, just like if I purchase an apartment and I go there to take possession and you stop me, that is illegal. You will be arrested if I go to the police. Or if I'm living in the apartment and you come to kick me out, it is illegal. You will be arrested. Like that. So that soul, he's purchased that womb, that's his apartment. If you stop him to come, that is illegal. If he's inside and you kick him out, that is illegal. And he just went on saying about, you will go from womb to womb and you will never see the light of day. He was just preaching so heavily against abortion. And on the way back, he was a little quiet. And there was one Indian man there, and he suddenly said, "Oh, Prabhupada, I read today that this Guru Maharaj Ji, his mother has denounced him." And we all laughed. And Prabhupada said, "What is that?" He said, "This Guru Maharaj Ji, she's come in the papers and she's saying this guy is a bogus fellow and she's denounced him." And Prabhupada laughed and everyone laughed, and we walked a few more steps, and that Indian man said, "Yes, practically she has finished him." And Prabhupada stopped and he dug his cane into the street and he looked at all of us and he said, "She should have finished him in the womb."
I came to Vrindavan in early 1976. In those days it was all one GBC, and they wanted me to do some work with children in Vrindavan. And eventually I got to clean Prabhupada's rooms. Shruti Rupa had been cleaning Prabhupada's rooms, but one day and I was helping her. And one day she said to me, "Okay, Moksha, that's it, I'm going, you're in charge." So I was left with Prabhupada's rooms to look after, which was ecstatic. And the way it worked was, after Mangalatik, before Tulsi Puja even started, I'd leave and I'd go in the back way into Prabhupada's room through where the fountain is, although the fountain, I think that came slightly later, but it came around that time, the fountain through the back door. And I'd go into the prasadam room, or the breakfast room, I always called it. And you could see how Prabhupada had walked from his bedroom, the old bedroom, not where the bed is now, obviously, through the prasadam room and into his room, because the doors would all be open. And I'd sneak into Prabhupada's prasadam room, trying to make as little noise as possible, because he'd be sitting right there in his darshan room translating. And I'd slowly, slowly close the doors, trying not to make any noise. But he always looked up, and he'd look up and I'd, pay my obeisance, close the doors, pay my obeisances, so as not to disturb him. And then I'd start cleaning the back of the house where his bathroom and the toilet was, and his bedroom. So when Shruti left, or even, it might have even been when Shruti was still there, she told me how the Prabhupada was complaining that his marble floor had become stained from the mustard oil, his massages. It looked like the marble stain, but it wasn't, it was actually stains on the marble, and how Prabhupada had complained. So I'd started systematically getting rid of these stains by sprinkling, I don't think you have it in America, in England we have it, it's called like Vim, it's like a white scouring powder. You get it here in India, and I sprinkled it all over the floor. And I got a hard broom, the Indian hard brooms, and I would scrub and scrub and scrub, and these stains were slowly going. So to do that, I'd be like Indian style, sari wrapped around my knees, squatting, scrubbing away. So there I was one day, sari around my knees, scrub, 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 and the door starts to open. I thought, oh my God, it can't be Prabhupada, no. And Prabhupada's head peeped round the door. He didn't open the door completely. He opened it a little way, and he peeped his head round the door, and he said to me, "May I come in?" Which I thought was such perfect manners. May I come in? Not like, get the hell out of here, you're in my bathroom, but may I come in? So I kind of like totally flabbergasted, because Prabhupada never went in the back of his house during that period. It was before he'd go on his morning walk. That was his time. He was at his desk. So I said, yes, Prabhupada, of course, Srila Prabhupada. Come in, Srila Prabhupada. I remember just kind of babbling like that. And I scurried out. And I paid my obeisances in the bedroom, which had a black floor. And I remember that I left this huge mess where, you know, all this scouring powder, which had been on my feet, on the floor. But Prabhupada like sailed over this mess. He just sailed right over it, didn't say a thing, because I could understand he was pleased that these stains were being left. But I always remember Prabhupada's perfect manners. May I come in? It was his house, not mine. He didn't need my permission.
So I went there in '76. We took Prabhupada's books. We showed them to scholars in Moscow and Leningrad. At that time, St. Petersburg was called Leningrad. And they appreciated the books. And then we went there again in '77. When I went there in '77, the late Prithu Putra Maharaj was there also, and Bhugarba. So we took part in the book fair. It was a very big book fair. And in the end, we got a certificate from the Soviet government appreciating Prabhupada's books for bringing world peace. So I received the certificate in Bombay around September '77. I took it to Prabhupada, who was in Vrindavan. His health wasn't so good. Prabhupada was so happy with that certificate that Soviet government has recognized Prabhupada's books as contributing to world peace. That Prabhupada showed that certificate to everyone who came. His godbrothers would come, he would say, this is the recognition we got from Soviet Union. Unfortunately, we've lost that certificate somewhere. I feel really sorry. But Prabhupada very much appreciated that the Soviet government was appreciating our books.
This was in Vrindavan, and we were going to the holy places. And on the way back, the bus broke down. So it was all women. And we weren't concerned, you know, we were feeling very, very protected. But later on we heard that Srila Prabhupada was very concerned. He was very worried about us. And he kept on asking, where are the women, where are the women? He didn't go to sleep until we returned. And he had also commented, he said that he was worried that after he left that the women would not be protected. So I thought that that was very significant, that Prabhupada was so concerned about us and worried about, you know, the fate of the women when he was gone. That really touched, you know, it really touched my heart.
And he would comment about the birds, the atmosphere of Vrindavan, and when he'd hear the artik going on in the temple, he'd hear the artik and he'd say, this is the perfection of human life, to be a pujari. He said, this is the highest service that one can perform as a human being, to be a pujari. And then he said, because with a material body, you're serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're waking him up, you're bathing him, you're dressing him, you're feeding him. These are the actual activities that we are doing in the spiritual world. But in this world, you're doing this actions. He said, so this is the perfection of human life. There's nothing higher than you can be, but to be a pujari. So then I had always heard from my godbrothers that, you know, distributing books was the highest service, you know, which is a very elevated service. But Prabhupada was saying, you know, on the absolute platform, you know, the highest service is to serve Krishna eternally. And this is a way to actually serve Krishna eternally. So if you're a pujari, you've attained your constitutional position, even within a bounded samsara, even within, you're liberated. He's probably saying this person is liberated.
In fact, one time he was telling us how he stays Krishna conscious. He says, in my room, I have a madanga, so I can sit down and play it for a while. When I get tired of that, I'll go over and do some translation. When I finish with that, I can go to the harmonium and sing a song. Then I have correspondence to do, like one activity after another, all connected to Krishna.
Prabhupada had a particular mood in Vrindavan that he was extremely attentive to detail there. Especially, he was concerned that we should not be cheated by the local merchants, that nothing should be wasted, that everybody's behavior should be, proper to the proper standard. So he was on his porch area, which is towards the back of his house there. There was a second floor porch area where he sometimes used to sit to do translation at night. And he was looking over the balcony, and from where his balcony was, you could see into the kitchen, guest house kitchen. And Prabhupada began suddenly to shout, "Stop him! Stop him!" And so there was a big flurry in the kitchen, and suddenly they grabbed a hold of this person, and they took his chadar away, and he had a huge bag of sugar that he was stealing. And Prabhupada had been the only one that had spotted it. Just with the casual glance, you could immediately understand that someone was stealing it from the kitchen. And he was chastising, that nobody was, attentive to what was going on. But he was very, very careful like that. He wanted us to learn the same kind of carefulness.
When I went to receive a Gayatri mantra from Srila Prabhupada, it was in his room in Vrindavan in 1976. And so when I came into the Prabhupada's room, I paid my obeisances and chanted the pranam mantra. And after the pranam mantra, I said in a loud voice, "Jai Srila Prabhupada." And Prabhupada immediately responded, "Jai Srila Prabhupada." And just for a split second, once bewildered by this, and of course I immediately realized that his Srila Prabhupada was Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And so what it indicated to me was that whatever honor that we gave to Srila Prabhupada, whatever respect, he was passing that on to his spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession to Krishna himself. So that was Srila Prabhupada's great quality as a pure devotee of the Lord, that he was the transparent via medium to Krishna and to the parampara.
I remember one class, that was when Prabhupada was saying how much money we had spent to come. And I thought, this is strange for Prabhupada to be talking about how much money we had spent. And he calculated how many we were and how much it cost. I think he came up with $200,000 we had spent to come to Vrindavan. And then he said, "This is very good use of money because you have come to Vrindavan, and whatever you do in Vrindavan, that is multiplied 1,000 times."
And one morning, when we were greeting the deities, Prabhupada was offering obeisances to Gaur Nitai, and then going to Krishna Balaram, and then to Radha Shyama-Sundar. So when Prabhupada was offering obeisances, someone touched Prabhupada's foot. When Prabhupada got up, he told him, "Don't touch my feet." And then he continued on to the other altars, and then took Charanamrita. And then he sat on the Vyasasana, and there we were offering him garlands, chanting, we were touching his feet, offering him flowers, offering obeisances. And it was a little amusing to me, to see that, the contrast. But then I reflected on it, and I realized, well, when he's in front of the deities and offering his obeisances, he's a devotee. I mean, he's a spiritual master, but he's also a devotee, and then he's in that mood, so he doesn't want his feet being touched. But later on, he's the ambassador of Krishna. So So Prabhupada always knew where to, where he was. He was never confused in any situation. And it was so reassuring in one sense to have a person that it was always black and white. There was no confusion with Prabhupada. He always had the perfect answer. He was never, someone would ask him a question, immediately had the answer. He didn't have to refer to this or that, or, thinking, or let me think about it. It was like, bang, And an instant was the same thing. Prabhupada knew exactly, don't touch my feet. And it was a great lesson to be present, to see these things. Just by being in Prabhupada's presence, you would learn so many things, the subtleties of Krishna consciousness. So it was a beautiful experience.
So this was Kartik of 1972 in Vrindavan. And my husband and I at that time, we took our twin daughters who were 14 months old to India. And we were going to stay and live in India. He was going to do spiritual sky import business with Manibandha in Calcutta. But first we went to Vrindavan because Srila Prabhupada was there. So we arrived, and another devotee came with us. His name was Haridas. He's deceased now. So we got there, and the devotees took us in to, Prabhupada was staying at Radha Damodar, and they took us in, and Prabhupada said, "Oh, so Krishna has brought you here." And I thought, wow, I never thought like that. Krishna actually brought us here to Vrindavan. And he said, "Have you taken prasadam?" I said, no, Prabhupada. And he said, "You're following Ekadasi?" I said, "No, Srila Prabhupada, I'm sorry, I forgot." I said, the devotees from London, they had given us some bread, and when we were standing in the line to get permission to come into the country, I said my children were hungry, and I gave them some, and I forgot, and I ate some also. I said, "I'm so sorry." And Prabhupada said, "Kirti Kirti, give them some sweets." Where I thought that, oh my God, he's going to say I'm going to hell. I've committed the most abominable sin imaginable. But he just totally just dismissed it and said to his servant, "Give them some sweets," like that. So that showed me how, even though breaking Ekadasi is such a very heavy thing, because it was unintentional and because it was innocent on my part, Prabhupada was just very, very merciful and very compassionate, and he didn't chastise me. So I felt a lot of mercy and a lot of love in that lesson of realizing that up the road, if anything like that should happen in exchanges with devotees, to let them know that when it's unintentional. And he didn't say, "Oh, follow the next day." Later on we learned that if you break Ekadasi, follow it the next day. But there was not even any mention. And that was the most relaxed I had ever seen him, because we know later on he said Vrindavan was his home. So with the no shirt on, back in the chair with his hands behind his head, I got to see yet another side of Prabhupada that I had never seen except in the little performances when he was very childlike. But here he was just totally in his element at home in the holy Dham of Vrindavan. It was very wonderful.
Srila Prabhupada, he would give the most wonderful practical examples to explain the most difficult philosophical concepts for us, his aspiring disciples. One time in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada was struggling to present to us in terms that we could understand the fact that everything is absolutely conscious and sentient in the spiritual world. So he paused for a short time, and then he said, just like when Radharani is cooking for Krishna, she will ask the rice in the pot, "Are you ready yet?" And the rice will say, "No, not yet, give me a few more minutes."
Vrindavan in 1975 or 76. We were walking down the road. There were some events that led up to this, but we're walking down the road and Prabhupada looks and sees a pig get out of the water and run off. And Prabhupada started laughing. And he said, in New York, you have seen that library on, I think, 42nd Street, New York Public Library. Very big. Prabhupada said, so many books, thousands and thousands of books, Prabhupada said, all about sex. It's kind of funny how Prabhupada would sometimes exaggerate things for effect. And it was brilliant comedy, in a sense. Thousands and thousands of books, all about sex. How to make sex, how to study sex, the psychology of sex, how to have better sex. Prabhupada said, Dr. Freud, philosophy. Prabhupada said, but this hog, he has not read any books, but he can have sex with his mother, with his daughter, with his sister. Oh yes, he can do. And Prabhupada said, he can make sex better than you. And he has not read any book. So if you want good sex, then you come back as a hog. And he, it was just like a moment of just punching, Another time he was walking down the road in Vrindavan, and he saw camel off in the distance chewing on thorny trees, just like we read about in the Bhagavatam. And Srila Prabhupada looked up, and prior to that, he had been very kind of growly. He was disturbed by some of the things that he considered to have not been yet managed correctly in the build-up to the opening of the Vrindavan temple. So he was pointing these things out, to the different people like Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Dayananda and so on. So I won't go into the details of that, but he was kind of growly, and then he looked up and saw this camel, and immediately he started chuckling. He said, just see, just like our Grihastas. And Sri Govinda Prabhu was walking next to Prabhupada, and he said, don't you mean the Griyamadis, Srila Prabhupada? And Prabhupada looked, and he's walking with his cane, and he goes, you are talking Griyamadis, I am talking Grihastas. So then he stops, and he says, isn't it so much difficulty, so much labor, like the camel? He chews the thorns, he's eating his own blood. Prabhupada said, there's so much labor, so much effort, so much work to have a child. And the wife has to suffer so much. Then labor, then the child comes, so much pain. And then Prabhupada said, and then the man, he has to work so hard, 20-year sentence. And then Prabhupada says, and 1 year later, the wife says, I want another. And Prabhupada says, this is Maya. And then from that, a whole conversation ensued about, well, some men have to get married. Otherwise, you say that all the women should be married, Prabhupada. Yes, that is best. But then some men are going to have to marry. And Prabhupada said, yes. And then he turned and he stopped and he looked right at Sri Govinda and he put his finger up and he said, but when you marry, you must understand you are doing so under the influence of the modes of material nature. With the idea being that it's passion, not compassion, that brings us to this point. And then he said, you understand? And Sri Govinda said, he stared right at Prabhupada like terrified, And he said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada turned and he walked. And as we walked by the camel, Prabhupada just laughed. He just chuckled. So, it was almost like the Bhagavatam coming to life, the verse in the Bhagavatam.
That time he told some stories in his room one night. He was speaking about common sense. And he said, he was talking about real intelligence. If a man is intelligent, he said, if a man is intelligent, he will, when he is lying on his back, he will naturally count the rafters. Very interesting. He was talking about common sense intelligence and the ability to be observant. And so he began to tell different stories. He said that when he was a child, during the rainy season in Calcutta, there would be a dripping pipe outside the window, and he would use the sound of that dripping pipe as a metronome, and he would practice his mridanga beats faster and slower according to the dripping of the pipe. And then he told one story about a train called the Punjab Mail, that a man was applying for a job, and there was a question on this job application: have you ever ridden the Punjab Mail? And the applicant said yes, many times. And so the next question was, how many cars are there on the Punjab Mail, the train that brings the mail to Punjab? So the idea was, if you're intelligent, you will have noticed how many cars are on that train. And then he told another similar story. A man was applying for a job. Two applicants came, and there was the man who was interviewing the applicants and his assistant. So one man came in, he sat down, he had his interview, he had many qualifications for the job. He was dismissed. He did not close the door after him, and he left. And then another man came, took his interview, sat down, took his interview, and he had none of the necessary qualifications for the job. But as he was dismissed, he closed the door properly behind him. And so the assistant to the interviewer said to his assistant, who do you think will get the job? And the man said, of course, the man with all the qualifications. And his director said, no, this man who has none of the qualifications will be given the job. But why? He said, because he closed the door behind him. So he will be able to be trained. We will be able to work with him. The other man, although he has the qualifications, he was not observant to close the door properly. So we won't be able to work with him in our company. So very interesting instructions about common sense and intelligence he was giving in his room in Vrindavan.
At the time of inauguration of the Vrindavan temple, Sri Prabhupada put me in charge of the kitchen, which always took a lot of my time. I missed most of the celebrations, festivities. So he also sent me to invite various saints of Vrindavan to come for the festival. I went to invite Karpatri Maharaj. Karpatri was the biggest impersonalist of India at that time, most respected person, very strict sannyasi. Because even though he was impersonalist, he was giving Bhagavad Saptahas and speaking about Krishna. He was living in Dhanuka ashram right next to ours. So I went to invite him for the inauguration. We had a week-long festival. Every day different saintly persons came. So I went to invite him. He said, well, I cannot come to your function. Why? I said, because your guru is giving Brahman threads to Westerners. This is not possible. This should not be done. So I said, well, why not? If they behave like Brahman, if they are rising early in the morning at 4 o'clock and they chant Hare Krishna 16 rounds every day, they study Bhagavatam, they study Gita, they study all the scriptures, and all day they spend in spreading the message of Sanatana Dharma. Whereas the Brahmins nowadays in India, they are becoming bus conductors, and they are becoming factory workers, and they are becoming postmen. So how do you think that they are Brahmins and they are not Brahmins? These people are not Brahmins. So I agree like that. I said, Chaturvarnyam Maya system Gunakarma Vibhagasha. According to guna and karma, 4 divisions are devised. Then when I had gone to that Vallabhacharya, he also said that your guru is making brahmanas, giving brahman trade. So Prabhupada said, open Srimad Bhagavatam. So he asked me to bring Bhagavatam, 7th canto. Open chapter number 11. And it's the last verse. Narada Muni is instructing about the duties and roles of varnashram in that chapter, 7:11. And at the end he says that if you see the symptom of a brahmana in a shudra, or a symptom of a shudra in a brahmana, then he should be accepted in that category whose symptom he has. Yasya jal lakshanam proktam tasya varnabhivanjakam yadanyatra drishyata tat teneva vinidishyata. This sloka Prabhupada made me memorize in 1975, 74. So this was like somewhere deep in the scripture, this sloka. So I quoted this sloka to Karpatri Maharaj, and his eyes popped up like this. He said, your guru has trained you very well. Because Prabhupada had told me this sloka, so I quoted this sloka back to him, Karpatri. Yasaya lakshanam proktam tasya varnabhivanjakam. So he said, your guru has trained you very well. Then he said, but there is a tiger, actual tiger, and a tiger-like man. A man is considered, he's like a lion. So he's like a lion, but he's not lion. So he's like a Brahman, but not a Brahman. Like that, you can see how the Mayavadis use the word jugglery. So I came and narrated everything to Prabhupada, that this Karpatri was speaking like this. So Prabhupada said, did you tell him this verse? Yasya lakshanam proktam? I said, yes, Yasya lakshanam. And he said that your Guru Maharaj has prepared you very well. So I started laughing. He said, yes, prepared very well, everything accepted, but still he is so envious he will not come to our function. So unfortunate. This wonderful temple of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is opening. He appreciated, but it was too hard, Mayavadi.
I remember the exact date I landed, September 13th, 1976 was the first time I ever went to India as a brahmachari. And I arrived in Delhi and the devotee said, Prabhupada's in Vrindavan. So I just said, really? I didn't know even Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. So I went straight to Vrindavan. And I think I led a Sunday artik, the evening artik that night. So the next morning I was standing out chanting japa after Mangal artik, and Hansaduta Maharaj at the time came up to me and he said, Tranakarta, Srila Prabhupada wants to see you in his room. And I was like, I thought he was joking, so I said, joke. He goes, no, Prabhupada wants to see you now, so let's go. okay. So I go in Srila Prabhupada's room, I pay my obeisances, and I'm very nervous, and I get up on my knees and Prabhupada just standing by the door. He was just standing there, and he looked at me, and he said, you are playing mridanga very nicely. He said, where have you learned these things? And I said, from tape Srila Prabhupada and playing a kirtan. I said, but it's all your mercy. He said, Jai. And then he said and he said something that really really touched me. He said, I remember you from America. I was like, Jai Prabhupada. Then he pointed down to his harmonium. He said, so you can play? And I said, yes, Prabhupada. And he sat behind his harmonium. He started singing to Krishna. And actually, Harikesh was recording some of it. He was in the room. And I just started playing for Prabhupada. It was amazing. And it was very, very transcendental atmosphere, to say the least.
At one point in India, we had just arrived and we went in Vrindavan and we went right into Prabhupada's room. for darshan, which was filled with, devotees, maybe 24 devotees. And I sat in the back with my son and my daughter. And actually, I think I just had my daughter, 'cause my son stayed outside at that point. But I sat down quietly. My daughter got up. She was 1 year old, and she started walking up to Prabhupada. And the brahmachari at the door started waving me down, trying to get my attention. No, get her, bring her back. He's like motioning me to get the child and bring her back. You can't do that. And I just sort of looked at him like, looked out of the corner of my eye, saw him waving at me, and conveniently ignored him and looked at Prabhupada and made a motion like should I go get her, and Prabhupada put his hand up to stop. He said, no, just sit down. Because he could see the brahmachari flipping out at the door. And then I looked at Prabhupada for the last instruction on that. I wasn't going to just accept this fellow at the door. So he told me to sit, and Shantaya proceeded to walk up to Prabhupada's desk, and I had no idea what she was going to do up there at one. She started to look around Prabhupada's desk and walk around, and then she looked at Prabhupada and she walked over to him and crawled right across his lap and sat down on his lap. So everything else, all other conversations stopped as she took the show with Prabhupada, just exchanging their exchanges at that point, where he was playing with her and giving her a flower, and she was playing with his garland, and then she moved on and crawled off his lap, and he gave her a flower to take with her, and she came, then he nodded to me to come and take her, and so I picked her up and took her back to sit down. But it was just Prabhupada's his unlimited exchanges, with whoever, no matter what age they were, no matter who the devotee was. It was his the relationship building. He was always exchanging in a sweet relationship, even with the youngest children.
I remember one time a disciple of Prabhupada went to his room in Vrindavan. I won't mention his name, he's a nice devotee, but he was a GBC man at that time, and his hair had grown out a little bit, well, to cover myself, I'll say a little longer than mine is right now. And when he walked into Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan, Prabhupada immediately said, oh, he said, the hippie seeds are sprouting again.
And then another time, Prabhupada, well, he'd call us in all the time after every scientific conference. Every day he'd call us in to get the results. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was, of course, his secretary then, and Sri Damodar Maharaj, and Madhava, and Jnana, and Siddhaputa, myself, we'd come in. And one time we came in, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, so Prabhupada, your scientists are here. And Prabhupada couldn't see that well then. And he said, they're all in suits and ties, because even though the conference was in the Vrindavan temple, we wore suits and ties. And Prabhupada said, so get them chairs. Either Sri Damodar Maharaj or Tamal Krishna said, oh, we're your disciples, we sit on the floor. And Prabhupada said, no, they have to have chairs. But there weren't enough chairs. So I think 3 of us sat in one chair, and one of us sat down halfway pretending we were in a chair. Prabhupada couldn't see that well, but we couldn't sit on the floor, so we had to please Prabhupada. But he wanted his scientists, gentlemen, to be in chairs.
Thinking that sometimes all the other devotees, the servants would leave and I would be there fanning Srila Prabhupada. And I was thinking at one time, how is it that the spiritual master is sleeping? The Shastra says that the spiritual master never sleeps. So I was speculating and perhaps bothering Srila Prabhupada on a psychic level. Prabhupada was sitting there on his bed cross-legged in the the outer veranda on the outside in his rooms upstairs in Vrindavan. And he was seemingly snoring and in deep sleep. Lip was moving back and forth, and I thought, Prabhupada's snoring, he's sleeping. But I thought the spiritual master never sleeps. And as I'm thinking this nonsense, right in the middle of my thought, as Srila Prabhupada's snoring, he said, "What time is it?" Completely clear and attentive. And I realized then that Srila Prabhupada knew exactly what I was thinking and wanted to destroy that thought. 8:33 Srila Prabhupada. And immediately in my mind I just, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. I realized I shouldn't think anything in front of my spiritual master except Krishna conscious thoughts, love and devotion, and the Maha Mantra, chanting of Hare Krishna.
There was one occasion actually when a number of sannyasis were in Vrindavan. They were doing this Chaturmasya. There's quite a few of them. Most of them were new, fairly newish sannyasis at the time, and they were all growing these beards, and they were all in the dham, you know, chanting the extra rounds and things. It was a rainy season, and I'd been out with a group of devotees preaching, came back, and spoken to Srila Prabhupada about the preaching programs. And then Prabhupada came into the temple room and he just told all these sannyasis, "What are you sannyasis doing here? Why are you in the temple growing beards, eating, in the name of Krishna consciousness? Sannyasi's business is to go out and preach." So in that way he sent all the sannyasis out preaching.
My most intimate association with Srila Prabhupada was in 1976 in November in Vrindavan. I was traveling with the Southeast Asia Library Party, and with Satyanarayan, and we had gone up to Kashmir, which is a Muslim, 90% Muslim district area. And we were going to the colleges there and the libraries and distributing books. So I found one library, an Oriental library, with an old gentleman there, and I was showing him the books, and he said, "Oh, I think I have these books." I said, "No, it's not possible. It's the first time we've come here." He said, "Let me see." He went back, and he brought out Prabhupada's 3 original Bhagavatams. So I said, "That's fantastic. And now we have, you should take all the rest of them." So he took the whole, all the rest, the whole complete set of Bhagavatams, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Gita, Krishna book, everything. So that was really nice. So he said that the author had come there personally. So that was far out. Nobody knew that Prabhupada had gone to Kashmir. So on our way back, driving back through the Himalayas, we passed an apiary where they had beehives and everything, and we were thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great to get Prabhupada some real Himalayan honey, the real thing. So we got a big bottle like that. And we knew that Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, so we wanted just to go straight back to Vrindavan and tell him that we were preaching in Kashmir, and we'd distributed books, in the Muslim areas, and the Muslim colleges had taken it, and like that. So we arrived in Vrindavan, and Jagadish was Prabhupada's secretary at the time, and he knew me and Satyanarayan from Canada, in Toronto. He knew me, and he knew Satyanarayan from New York. So he said, "Okay, I'll try and arrange it." And then he came out a few minutes later and says, "Yes, Prabhupada will see you." So we came in, and Prabhupada was sitting with Gopal Krishna, and he was speaking to an Indian gentleman. And when we came in, he turned around and went like this and said, "Here are 2 very nice boys." So we came in, and we sat down, and Jagadish introduced us. And Satyanarayan spoke first and explained we'd been in Kashmir, and we preached and everything like this. We were the library party, and he was very pleased. We were distributing his books. And then his eyes opened really wide when he heard we were in Kashmir. He says, "Ah, Kashmir. I went to Kashmir." And he said, "Do you remember when you come over the crest of the hill and you see the Kashmir Valley?" "Yes, Prabhupada, we saw it." And he said, "Yes, I distributed my books there." So then I spoke up. I said, "Srila Prabhupada, I met that gentleman. He took your first 3 volumes. And then I distributed, after that, he took the whole set of your books, standing order." So that was nice to connect with Srila Prabhupada. So he was reminiscing about that. We spoke for about 5-10 minutes. And then what really stuck in my mind was just before we left, he looked me right, you know, he was speaking about preaching and everything, the importance of preaching. Then he looked me right in the eye and he said, so, wherever you go and whoever you meet, just tell them about Krishna. And in this way, you become Guru by Lord Chaitanya's order. And that really left a big, he was looking right at me. So when I left there, I thought, wow, if I don't tell people about Krishna, I'm in Maya, total Maya. So I thought, this is my mission. And we gave Prabhupada the bottle of honey, which he graciously accepted. And then Palika, who was his cook, she told us later that every morning Prabhupada used to like to have a little bit of that honey with his breakfast. So that was very nice.
We were in Vrindavan and got to clean his quarters every day. And then every day after lunch, Prabhupada would rest. And when he got up at 4 o'clock usually, we'd bring him fresh juice, a fresh garland, and sandalwood pulp. And so I had to make the garland one day. I had to find the flowers. First of all, it's not like it is today. You go to Vrindavan and outside you have 1,000,000 flowers you can purchase. At that time outside there was 0 flowers you could purchase. You had to go all the way in town to the Banki Bihari temple where they had some flowers outside of that temple. And somehow I scrounged up some flowers and made a nice garland with marigolds and roses. And I was less intelligent somehow and put some water in that garland before I put it in the fridge. And when they came and when they put it in Prabhupada, it was apparently wet. And he took it off immediately. And that was a chastisement that went deep into my heart, that he didn't accept my garland that time. And I just realized, you know, we have to like really use our intelligence and the best of everything for the Guru. Otherwise he might not accept our service. You know? So that was a deep realization.
So one year in Vrindavan, Prabhupada, you'd have to let all the devotees and different people in up to a certain point, and you'd have to stop the different devotees from coming in. And Prabhupada would always give such wonderful darshan. Sometimes you could just see Prabhupada, just his mercy reaching out to so many people. It was just, you could cut the air, it was so thick, and you just want to cry. And that's just, so if you go to so many darshans all the time, just seeing that is that you seeing the great wonder that Prabhupada had over people, had over devotees and visitors. So one day we were in Vrindavan, and a gentleman came, an Indian gentleman in the back. I really didn't pay attention because it was all full room. And Prabhupada said, we're getting toward the end of the darshan. He goes, where's the prasadam? And that was my responsibility to make sure everything was there. And I just realized there was no prasadam. Prabhupada had just told me earlier that or the day before, make sure every single person that comes to his darshan gets some prasadam. And he said, if there's not enough, then some of the devotees you cannot. But if there's enough, everyone should get prasadam. So he just looked at me, you know, where's the prasadam? And I was like, you know, so immediately I ran back into the back and I went into the deity's pujari room and said, where is the sweets are supposed to be for Prabhupada's distribution? And he says, well, someone was sick and they didn't make them. And I go, oh my God. So I was looking in there and I said, and I went into the deity's room just before they were making an offering. And I said, what is that? There was this whole tray of Maha sweets that they were going to give to Radha and Krishna. And I thought, you know, very quickly, and I took that tray. And as I took that tray, I brought it into, I put it on a transfer plate because I had it on the deity plate. And I brought it into Prabhupada. Now I was under a dilemma. How am I supposed to offer this? You can imagine it's like in my neophyte. Well, I'm trying to think, now I've got this prasadam, am I supposed to bow down and offer the 3 prayers first? I was like in this dilemma. Prabhupada just looked at me, obviously like saw through me, he goes, who is this nut of a disciple? And he said, come here. So he called me here and he said, open this plate I had. And he said, oh, I opened up and he looked at it. Now just maybe. And so, you know, and trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, Prabhupada saw my anxiety, he came and looked at it, and I realized just by offering it to the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada was so potent that that would be accepted for Krishna. After I took it from Krishna's plate. So then I distributed it to everyone. But someone in the back of the room had left without, I guess, first me giving it to it. And Prabhupada said that, he said, there is one man, he has left. You must give him this prasadam. You understand? You must give. And I'd never seen that before. So it was just a couple of seconds, so I took some prasadam when I expected to see the person just outside the door. But he wasn't there, so, oh my God, how did, you know, I thought so I kept going farther and farther toward the gate, still didn't see him, and finally went to the gate, and there he was at the gate. So just in a matter of seconds, he was up at the front, which I thought was very unusual. But then I had caught him, and I gave him this prasadam and said, my spiritual master wanted me to make sure that you had some prasad. Yes. And then he looked at me and his head was covered with a chadar, and he was very, very unusual features, very Indian, but very, very regal. And he said, your spiritual master is very kind. And it kind of caught me, and he went down the road. I guess I turned in, I went down the road, and he wasn't there anymore. So as I was going back to Prabhupada's, I was thinking, you know, who are these personalities that, you know, that come even in to take darshan of Prabhupada?
Krishna Kirtana Gana Natana Pano Anilo Premadana Karuna Prachu Anilo